Hey everyone, my name is Aaron, and this is Super Pod Saga. Yeah, for any first-time listeners, this is the podcast where Aaron and Tommy discuss a different topic each episode, and we'll talk about it right down to the bone, and then we'll select the sweet video gaming marrow right out of those digital bones. You can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and Tumblr. Just search for Super Pod Saga, and you'll find all of our stuff available in our link tree as well. And unfortunately, Tommy couldn't be here with us today, but we've got an awesome guest for you. It's Bill from the Gaming and Collecting Podcast. How are you, Bill? What are you doing, man?
Hey, dude, I'm doing all right. Thanks for having me again.
Yeah, you bet, absolutely. Go ahead and introduce your show and all that stuff, and whatever you guys are doing.
Yeah, so I'm one of the two hosts of the Gaming and Collecting Podcast. The Gaming and Collecting Podcast is mostly a gaming and anime-based nostalgia podcast I host with my sister Alex. We kind of go over different topics from like our childhood, but also like some modern stuff. We kind of switch between gaming and anime-related topics. It's been going pretty well so far.
Awesome, yeah, and I saw in one of the Discords earlier that you're really liking Yu Yu Hakusho, which is awesome.
Yeah, that may or may not be a future topic at some point.
Who have they? I forget when it is that they get the other two guys, but who's your favorite of the main dudes so far?
So far, I'm probably we have the full party now at this point. I guess that's one way to put it. I guess Yusuke, just from a character standpoint, just because we haven't really got enough like character development for Hiei or Kurama yet. But from like meme potential, definitely. What's his name? Kuwabara. Kuwabara's the most entertaining, that's for sure.
He's the Joey Wheeler of that show for sure.
Yep, voiced by Vegeta.
He's fucking ridiculous. Shut up, Urameshi.
Yeah.
That dude kills me. Oh my god. Hiei is he's totally a badass later on in the show.
See, I laugh because like I watch everything dubbed. I've just always been a dub fan, and watching that one, that is very clearly one of Funimation's earliest dubs, because like you can point out like all those voices like so easily. Like you hear Kuwabara, and you're like, that's just Vegeta. Hiei is totally Android 17. There's a few other ones. I think Kurama is Tien. Like they're all like some of the early funny cast.
That wouldn't surprise. They're probably made about the same time as Dragon Ball Z and all that. That sounds about right.
I think it was like dubbed around like 2002. I want to say.
That's so hard to believe. It feels like just yesterday.
Which is crazy because the show's from like the mid '90s, but it didn't.
Holy cow.
It didn't make its jump over here until the early 2000s.
Well, yeah. You're our guest. So what's our topic today? What are we talking about?
We're actually talking about the best RPG soundtracks, I should say, RPG soundtracks.
Yeah, those are probably some of my favorite tracks to listen to in my spare time. I have so many different little YouTube playlists of different, like there's like a chill tunes playlist and like ones that slap, and then there's one just for battle themes and stuff like that. So this is an awesome one. I'm glad you picked that topic. Hell yeah.
Well, I mean, when you're playing a game of mostly just flipping through menus, you got to have a kick-ass like background music to keep you entertained.
That's true. I tried to limit myself to just maybe like 4 or 5, which was surprisingly tough because there's a lot that go unnecessarily hard. It's there's quite a few, especially from like recently actually, that were super duper good as well.
And there's like certain composers too that you like immediately will like signal out to because they just like have like a great track record.
Oh my god, yeah. Who's the guy that does Final Fantasy again? I always forget his name. It's like
Nobuo Uematsu.
Yeah, there we go. You can always tell. Oh my god, I don't think he's done a bad Final Fantasy yet, because I just haven't ever listened to like 11 or 14, but everyone else has been good so far. But
I'm sure he'll be on this list at some point.
Oh my god, yeah, absolutely. And I also tried not to include Final Fantasy IX on this because everybody knows if you watch our show, you know I love Final Fantasy IX. It's not on this episode, so you're welcome. but yeah, you're our guest once more. So yeah, go ahead with your first one if you want.
Well, if we're gonna, ironically, you mentioned how you didn't want us to do 9, but I can't like do an RPG soundtrack episode and not talk about Final Fantasy VIII soundtrack.
That one is yeah, that one's super good as well. I love the battle theme on that one.
I've made this comment with a lot of people over the years, but to me, I think it's actually his finest work.
Yeah, and I can't think of a bad track, honestly, because even just like some of the early ones in the game, like the one for Balam Garden in the world
Blue
map.
Fields is like probably one of like the best overworld themes.
That's probably one of my favorite parts of any Final Fantasy game is the world map themes, honestly. Those are just all, like, 7, 8, and 9, I have stuck in my head forever, but those are absolutely some of the best.
Well, it's funny with Uematsu, because he composed every single track on Final Fantasy 1 through 9. And then he basically, like, hit his peak with 9. Because then 10, they brought in people to help him, just because, like, he did every single track in like all the PlayStation 1 games, so by the time they got to 2, it was like
really?
the PS2 era. They were like, alright, he's gonna need some help. And then after after 10, I think he slowly kind of just faded away and like went off to do his own stuff. But
that makes sense, because 10 definitely got super orchestral there in some parts, minus the that one like Cookie Monster sounding song. What the hell, like, yeah, I can't even begin to describe that goofy one. But
see, when I think 10, I always think Otherworld with the freaking death metal song for no reason.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, that's the where it's like, all right, yeah.
I think that was Uematsu too. He did write that one.
Oh my god, I hope he did the vocals for that one too. He deserves a lot of credit for that one.
Yeah. Okay. That guy was a trendsetter too. Like, he did things for soundtracks that like no other composer did at the time. Like, to this day, I still do not know how he got that sound out of the Super Nintendo.
That's a good one to bring up too. The Super Nintendo. I don't know how anybody got such great tunes out of it, because it's all like.
Well,
I guess I don't know how music is made, but
because that was during the era of everything was made on sound cards. The Super Nintendo was an interesting one because that era in particular was obviously Super Nintendo versus the Genesis, and both systems had very different ways of like producing sound. Like, the Genesis was more the traditional sound card where like they manipulated sounds to like make different sounds. The Super Nintendo used like sampling, which was very different for the time. It was actually the sound card in the Super Nintendo was made by Sony, of all things.
That's so
which
wild.
Is partially how they was like one of the first stepping stones to how the PlayStation ended up becoming a thing. But that's a story for another day.
The Nintendo PlayStation.
Nintendo's biggest mistake they ever made.
Oh my god! Yeah, they really paid for it with that generation with the PlayStation. My god, did the Nintendo 64 get it got Dikembe Mutombo'd for sure.
Yeah.
No.
And then the GameCube got it even worse.
Oh, and that one's so sad. And by the way, it's so crazy that we both did I think in the same week we both did a GameCube episode. That was pretty
completely by happenstance.
That GameCube's just so great, though.
It is. It's hilarious that when you realize that that's technically a failed console.
Oh my god, so many awesome games on it too, and I don't think my list didn't have any GameCube games on it, unfortunately, because it got beaten out by quite a few other awesome games. But
unfortunately, RPGs were not the GameCube's biggest strong point. There was a few classics, but like compared to PS2.
Yeah, it definitely got shut down.
That entire generation could literally be described as curb stop. PlayStation 2 did like decimated basically everything in that generation.
It really did, and we I don't know if you guys talked about this in your GameCube episode, but we talked about it in ours. But the PlayStation 2 could just do everything. It could do CDs, it could do DVDs. It also had well, no, I guess it needed no, it had built-in LAN, I believe, on the original model, and it was everything all in one. It's crazy.
Well, I had mentioned that like the majority of like me and Alex actually lived in a big like Nintendo heavy area for whatever reason. And we were like the one like family that had PlayStation stuff. We kind of joked that during that era, everyone had a PS2, but like you go to a friend's house and they have a PS2, and you'd be like, "Oh, you want to play some games?" And their response is, "Oh no, that's our DVD player." So,
yeah, we when I first got my PS2, that was the first thing I did as well. I just played a DVD, and I couldn't tell you what the hell movie. I think it was some random one that we had, because that was around the time DVDs were just getting to be popular. So it was some bullshit one, like I think it was like called The Ghost in the Darkness, and it was all about lions or something. I forget. I was little as hell, but it's great.
It was definitely the cheapest DVD player at the time.
Hell yeah, it was. And I'm gonna talk about one of my favorite soundtracks ever, which was a game that was eventually ported to the PS2, so that segue almost made sense. But Grandia 2 is...
Grandia 2.
It's so good.
I saw you posted that earlier in the server.
Oh my gosh. So many good tracks.
The tragic PS2 port, because my god, it is rough.
Yeah, there was... I haven't played the PS2 version, because I've only played the HD remaster that they have on the Switch.
That's actually based off the PS2 version.
Okay. I remember reading a couple places somewhere about how they fixed this like huge texture issue that the PS2 had. Where,
Yeah,
it was like after battles or
the
whatever.
PS2 version was a butchered port compared to the Dreamcast original, which is always baffling to me because the Dreamcast was weaker than the PS2. But
yeah, and I mean, yeah, I kind of adore those the graphics on Grandia 2. I don't know what it is about it, but everything just looks so neat.
Dreamcast era 3D was very fascinating. Like it wasn't the prettiest 3D, but it had a distinct look to it that just kind of like it holds up to this day. Like there's a reason why people consider the Dreamcast to be one of the greatest like failed consoles ever made.
It absolutely is. And I don't know when the hell we'll ever get Power Stone 1 or 2 on any other console ever.
Other than that one PSP port years ago, yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, I forgot about that one. I always forget about that one.
Well, everyone forgets about the PSP because everyone thinks when they think PSP, they always think, oh yeah, that thing that played JRPGs.
That thing that had really small DVDs that you can't really ever find anymore, that are hard to find.
Yeah, that's true.
But oh man, yeah, Grandia 2 had some really good tracks. Like, no matter where you go or what you're doing in that game, except for maybe like one town that has no background music to it, every track is it's so serene, and I should say for the towns, and when you're just like exploring and stuff, it's so serene and just ambient, and it makes you feel like you're a part of that. Well, not a part. You're in that town. I don't know how to explain it, but it's good.
So the composer for Grandia 2 was I apologize for these names because I'm probably going to butcher them, but Noriyuki Awadare, or Dar. Your guess is as good as mine there.
That's alright.
It looks like other works he's done, because he worked on like the Lunar games, it appears. Oh, he did Lunar Eternal Blue.
Whoa.
That's where that name comes from for me. And Grandia, of course, and Grandia 1 as well. He had a pretty unique style, though. It could be very, like, atmospheric at times, but also very, like, kind of, like, poppy and, like, upbeat. Which really... really fit for the time in a lot of ways.
Yeah, for sure it had some of that, like, early 2000s attitude to it, especially, like, the battle theme, where it just... starts off kind of soft and easy, and then you hear that guitar like squeal there toward the middle. Like it definitely had that early 2000s
The
PS1 Dreamcast attitude that you'd see in like Sonic Adventure or something.
the era of like when synths were getting pushed away and like real instruments were finally starting to get brought in. It was a fun time for RPGs.
That really was. And if either yourself or anybody else is listening to this and you want to find some of the best tracks, probably the best one is, it's called In Town Agil, and there's also Dangerous Zone and Nightmare Village Milm, and because there's no official soundtrack for the damn thing, so I've just been stuck going on YouTube to find it. But yeah, those are the three best.
Yeah, Grandia 2. Dang, I really want to play that game again at some point. It's just there's so much RPG and I don't have time right now.
Oh my gosh, and I love that there's so much customization to it, because unlike other RPGs where your characters learn new skills or spells by leveling up, or through like other like a sphere grid or whatever, you just equip different books, or no, that's only spells I should say, different books for like different element spells and stuff like that. And
I love the battle system too, like how it kind of like you kind of like would plan things ahead, and then like you'd have to like kind of wait. Like it was more strategic, but also it was still turn based and like simple.
Hell yeah, that was, and you could cancel enemies' turns, or you could attack them and delay. That needs to be brought back. Well, I guess they have in other games, but yeah, those games were just so good. More so the second than the first, because sometimes the first is really, really janky, and like your characters will be stuck like perpetually running into an enemy, and they won't go around. But
classic 2D era 3 games. So I guess moving on to my next one. So this one is a fairly recent game that recently got a very hyped re-release. So have you ever played an RPG and like not even like 2 hours into it and you immediately had to own the soundtrack?
Oh god,
because it was that good.
Oh my god, yeah.
So the most recent game for me, where literally like 2 hours of gameplay, I jumped onto eBay and imported the soundtrack because it was that good. Persona 5.
Yeah, I could have seen that coming. Yeah, that one is just too good. So jazzy, and
it's jazzy, but it's also rocky, and like there's like pop era moments, and it is one of the most diverse soundtracks I think I've heard in an RPG in years.
Oh, there was one that I downloaded the other day that was, because I've only played just like maybe 20 hours of Persona 5, so I haven't probably gotten all the best ones yet, but there's a couple really, really good ones that I would love to. Royal Days, that's a good one. And that's all I have.
Beneath the Mask is like a classic.
Yeah.
The theme when like you're in the protagonist's like little apartment or room that he stays in, like gradually throughout the game, it's slowly, as you get through the story, that song like evolves and gets more and more complex with each and every like chapter, which is a really fun like
That's
touch.
Cool.
It says a lot too, because like I've said on a lot of podcasts, Persona 4 is my favorite game of all time, but 5 soundtrack is on another level. Like 4 soundtrack is great as well, but 5 soundtrack like pushes like the boundaries of like what a video game. Honestly, I don't even like to call it game music, because it's literally just music.
It really is. Yeah, it's so hard to believe that game, like the music in that game is so diverse, when other games are just kind of like, I feel like most RPGs just kind of default to like orchestral or like maybe something synthy, but that game they were just like, no, we need so many more trumpets. We need trombones.
Like one of
trumpets.
The song that actually convinced me I needed to own that soundtrack was the victory music whenever you finish a battle.
Oh, that's
where
a
like
good
that
one,
weird,
yeah.
that weird like keyboard like starts playing and it like just starts jamming out, and I'm
yeah, dude.
I need to own this. I paid $50 to import that thing too, which was nuts at the time, but it was so worth it.
Sometimes after a battle, I'll just leave them just leave them running forever, just so I can jam out to that, like dun, 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 dun. Like, oh man, that's a really, really good one.
I love how every song in that game feels like a heist too. Like they have the heist theme throughout that entire thing. Or like when they're like before you go on a mission, they're like chilling in like the mall or like at the subway station. It just kind of has that like kind of like chilling music, like but they're like still plotting their next heist, I guess you could say.
I will say that I've played maybe like halfway through 3 and 4, but I never expected 5 to be like they're planning heists, like they're actual thieves. Like I've heard of the whole Phantom Thieves thing, but I didn't realize they're actually like Mission Impossible kind of thieves, just going covert and going in there.
Five is so good, like in terms of gameplay. I'll still to this day say I think 4 has a better story, but five's gameplay is like it takes the best of like aspects from 3 and 4 and just refines everything.
That yeah.
So even like from a soundtrack standpoint, like 3 is like super like dark and moody. 4 is very positive and upbeat, and then 5 is like a straight up like jazz like band ensemble. It's crazy.
I still to this very day have not looked up any like I haven't looked up the story on like Wikipedia or anything, or like tried to spoil it for myself because I want to beat it, but it's so fucking long. Eventually I'll beat it, but yeah.
I do a yearly playthrough of that game. It's like 130 hours, I want to say.
For just the story, or is there like other side stuff you can do?
Well, that's like doing a full playthrough. At least like a full playthrough I usually do. I think a complete playthrough can be up to like 160 hours depending on how you how you play.
Holy shit.
I mean, if you just kind of rush your way through it and like don't do any of the social links, you can probably do it in maybe under 100.
That's
Keep
what
in
I'll
mind
do.
too. Keep in mind, Golden also added a ton of shit.
Fuck. Yeah, I'm never gonna do that. No, I'll try it. Once it comes to Game Pass, I'll do it. So I don't have to bust out the old fat boy PS2 anymore.
Yeah, well, then Golden just is the definitive way to play that game now.
Speaking of, while we're still on the whole Shin Megami Tensei series, Shin Megami Tensei 4 is one of my, yeah, it's one of my forever best, like, favorite soundtracks ever, because for those that don't know, for those who have only played Persona games, Shin Megami Tensei is basically like, it's like if survival horror was an RPG almost. Like, I forget about the other games, but 4 for sure is like, it's this huge mix of like, maybe like 80s dark synth, and then like real heavy guitars, and like, whenever you're in a battle, whether it's in like just regular battle or even against bosses, it's like the battle music really makes you feel like it's like, hey, you know, you're fighting for your life. You're gonna have to use everything you've got in your arsenal, bad boy, to take these guys down. Especially the boss battle theme, because it absolutely slaps. It's the very first boss battle against that Minotaur. The first time I ever played that game against the Minotaur, and he beat my ass like 5 times in a row. That track was just so fucking sweet. And then there's all the other different tracks that play when you're exploring Tokyo and everything else around there. The world map theme, especially. World map themes are just some of my favorite shit ever.
Yeah.
And
so,
go ahead.
So, the Persona series from 3 onward, anyways, the first 2 are a little. It's more confusing, but from 3 onward, the Persona series has always been composed by primarily Shoji Meguro, who's done pretty much. He's done the majority of the tracks for those 3 games, and I think he's done a lot of other Atlas work. I was just looking up though to see if he was involved in 4. He actually wasn't. Shin Megami Tensei 4 was one of the few games that he was not involved in. Instead, the primary composer for 4 was Ryota Kozuka, that's a name I've seen before, because I know he's done work on the Persona series.
Yeah, that's... So I know 3 might have had maybe a few songs that were pretty similar to Shin Megami Tensei 4, but yeah, 4 or Persona 4 and Persona 5 are super jazzy. And
Shin Megami Tensei 3 was actually primarily composed by Shoji Meguro, believe it or not.
Oh, what the fuck? Well, shit.
That's it. That's interesting, actually. Which is funny because three just got a re-release, I believe.
Yeah, it did, and I know a lot of people shat on it because it was kind of just a bare bones remaster, but the fact that you can play it on like anything now, including PC, like it's pretty great. And that one also has a really really good soundtrack too. Like all the different battle themes, they're all really good. It's a good
Yeah. I mean, it's a PS2 game from like the mid 2000s. What are they really going to expect? I think it's because five came out shortly after, and 5 looks amazing.
Would Persona 5 or Shin Megami Tensei 5?
Shin Megami Tensei 5.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, 5, that's also... Really, pretty much any... Well, I haven't played Shin Megami Tensei 1 or 2, but 3, 4, and 5 all have really good soundtrack, as well as the spin-off, all the other spin-offs, and Strange Journey.
Soul Hackers 2.
Yeah, I still need to play that one, god damn it.
It's my game of the year.
Soul Hacker, hell yeah. Do they still... So I know the last Soul Hackers I played was... No, yeah, it was the one that was released on 3DS. Do they still use the whole magnetite bullshit, or no? Because I hate that so much.
It was similar. It was more advanced. Like, I got a lot of Persona vibes from it.
That's good. God damn it.
I really enjoyed Soul Hackers 2, but it's also like a modern game as opposed to a Saturn game that was ported to 3DS.
Fuck, older Shin Megami Tensei games had the whole like magnetite system where like as you walked your demons would consume magnetite, and if you ran out of that magnetite bullshit, their health would start to decrease, and I hate that. That's why I've never finished Soul Hackers on the 3DS, because I fucking hate that system. Not the 3D, I hate the magnetite system, but yeah, I absolutely need to try Soul Hackers too, because I can't pass up any Shin Megami Tensei anything.
Yeah.
It's a drug to me.
That was a great game. But anyways, I guess moving on now. So, I kind of went over like 2 of my like most acclaimed RPGs. I was thinking I wanted to go a bit like more something that's not exactly what you'd consider like the top tier of RPG soundtracks, but something that I'd still say like is arguably like probably one of the most like iconic. So the Mario and Luigi series.
Yes.
Honestly, any of them could be a contender for this, but to me I think the pinnacle of sound for that series is Bowser's Inside Story.
Oh my god. Yeah, that's one of my favorites of all time for sure. Especially Bowser's fucking battle theme. That was so freaking hard.
Yeah, my favorite thing about that game's soundtrack is, so the game has like an entire soundtrack for like the overworld, but then there's also a separate version of all those tracks for the inside Bowser segments. So you get like kind of these kind of like techno-ish versions for when you're inside Bowser, as opposed to the more traditional like poppy versions for when you're outside on the overworld.
Really?
And it's a cool.
That's cool.
And that game, along with pretty much every Mario and Luigi series title, was composed by Yoko Shinomura.
Yeah, those one. I had no idea. So the songs that play when you're inside Bowser, they're the same songs as when you're outside, but just like a different style, basically.
Basically, a different sound font.
That's awesome.
So like when you're doing like one of those like 2-tiered like dungeons where you have to move Bowser around, you'll hear the songs from his perspective, and then when you switch to the brothers inside, it'll change to the more techno version. So it's kind of like, okay, now we're inside Bowser and we're doing platforming.
That'd be funny if he was just all muffled because you're inside of him or something.
It kind of has an aspect of that, like in a way. That's one of the that is actually I think the best Mario RPG ever made.
Oh yeah, I'd agree too. Tommy really loves the Thousand Year Door, and I've never beaten a Paper Mario, but by God, I have beaten Mario and Luigi's Superstar Saga and Bowser's Inside Story, and yeah, Bowser's Inside Story for sure is my favorite Mario and Luigi RPG ever, because God, they really amped up how all the different like special like the bros moves and Had them, instead of just using like just the bros, they had all sorts of different little Mario themed items like shells and bob-ombs and shit. I forget, but
Also, about the best version of Bowser ever in the series. He's such a likable character in that game.
yeah, despite being a butthole, he is pretty awesome in that game.
My favorite part about that game is the whole reason he gets brought into the plot is because they're having a meeting in the Mushroom Kingdom about the virus going around that's making all the toads huge, and Bowser's not even there to start shit. He's just butthurt that they didn't invite him to the meeting. Because he's a resident of the kingdom as well. Like, he should be there.
Oh, one of my...
I always thought...
Go on.
I always thought that was a funny, like, little joke.
One of my favorite Mario and Luigi tracks is the battle theme from Superstar Saga, because that one is super duper good.
Honestly, like, even Partners in Time, for as flawed a game as that is, it has a bitchin' soundtrack.
That's the one. Like, I own the other what, 4? Yeah, 4. Like, I don't have Partners in Time yet though.
There's 5, I want to say now.
5. Yeah, so yeah, Superstar Saga, Bowser, Partners in Time, Dream Team, and
Dream Team
Paper Jam.
and Paper Jam, plus the 2 remakes.
Which, it's super weird that they decided to remake Bowser's Inside Story and not Partners in Time, but yeah, that's another one for another time. We're about halfway through. Should we take an ad break, or do you want to go with another one real quick?
We could do an ad break.
Okay. All right. Well, to quote Cyndi Lauper, girls just want to have fun, but sometimes men just want to have fun too. After all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. And oh man, did Jack deliver. Come on down to Jack's man cave. Only the manliest of men can enter here. The doorman will take a quick blood sample from you to measure your testosterone levels, and if you fail, you can just get the hell out. Jack's is only the manliest activities available. Activities such as lifting weights until you're completely paralyzed, rebuilding the entire engine of a Ford pickup truck, building a barn with your bare hands, and whipping an old tire with a rusty chain. While you're there, don't forget to try some of Jack's manliest foods and drinks. You won't find any salads or cosmopolitans there. Nope, Jack's has the best T-bone steaks that you'll find in the country. Their triple cannibal cowboy burger is the best burger you'll ever have in your entire life, with 3 all-American beef patties, onion rings, a scoop of baked beans, mayonnaise, Louisiana hot sauce, and heaps of cheese curds. You'll never leave Jack's with a wimpy-dimpy empty stomach. No, you won't. And don't forget to wash it down with some testosterone-infused drinks while you shotgun a 6-pack of Coors Light or just have a tall glass full of straight bourbon whiskey. No ice cubes at all. That'll sure wet your whistle. That's right, it's Jack's Man Cave. No girls allowed. And now we're back.
Nice.
Oh yeah, you're okay, yeah, you had the last one with Mario, that's right, okay. The next one I have, I really need to make sure I get one game from this series in here, because this series needs a lot more love. Etrian Odyssey 4 had no right going so hard, but especially that main battle theme, it just went so hard, and it's another one of those games where it mixes like this grand orchestra with a little bit of heavy guitars, a little bit. What is the battle theme called? Gale Force is what it's called, and that one will just blow your fucking face right off. It's just starts off slow, like one of those regular ones, or not like one of those usual battle themes that'll start off slow and then just shotgun blast your face off. It's so great.
So the best part about Etrian Odyssey, especially 4, is that game was composed by Yuzo Koshiro.
Yep. Man.
The good old Streets of Rage, like the Sega Genesis legend, Yuzo Koshiro.
Oh, I didn't know he did Streets of Rage.
He did Streets of Rage. He did he did a ton of shit on the Genesis. Like, he was one of those guys that really figured out how the Genesis sound card worked.
I'm gonna look him up really quick, because I know Etrian Odyssey was Sega, but well, yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, and yeah, the Sega Genesis was a weird one too, because it was a lot of the soundtracks had a lot of twang to them. A lot of that Genesis. Well, is that? I don't know if that's the best way to explain it, but
Well, so the way I've described the Genesis is you either had like the Sonic series, which was like the pinnacle of like how to properly like use that sound card, or you had everything sounds like wet farts. And it was very hit or miss, and it very much depended on the composer. Like some got it down really well, others not so much. Yuzo Kishiro was one of the guys though that he was like a master of the Genesis sound card.
oh my god, yeah, he did. Yep, and he did the 8-bit version of Sonic the Hedgehog. Holy cow, he did Shenmue 2. Shenmue and Shenmue 2. That's awesome. Way to go.
Beyond Oasis.
And he did almost one of my other picks, but he did Seventh Dragon, like the whole Seventh Dragon series. I almost picked one of those. Those are also really, really good.
He did a ton of stuff. Like I didn't realize he did like the entire Etrian Odyssey series too, which is even cooler. Oh, he worked on Kid Icarus Uprising. That's another one.
I'm still dumbfounded by the fact that he did Streets of Rage 2, because that's a legendary soundtrack.
A legendary soundtrack for a legendary game. Like Streets of Rage 2 still is just as good nowadays as it was back then. The next game I wanted to talk about. So this was tough because I was trying to like break down like a whole bunch of different games that I've played over the years. But actually going back to the Genesis, Phantasy Star 4.
Oh, that's a good. I hate to keep talking about battle themes, but that battle theme, that was really, really hard for a Genesis song, or Genesis game. I mean,
You know, the second I knew, like, so Phantasy Star 4 is without a question the best RPG on the Genesis. It's one of the best RPGs of that era, honestly, in a lot of ways. One of the ways I knew from the start that game's soundtrack was going to be good. The second you start the game up, that opening like intro with just like the bass just like blasting out of your speakers, I'm like, holy crap! I'm like, this one hits hard.
blasting out of your like late '90s CRT as hard as they could go.
That game had such a cinematic look to it too. Like it had the like anime, like manga style, like cutscenes that would pop up, and it did like the whole like killing off a main character, like killing off a party member, like in way before 7 did it.
And I liked how the battles looked, because back then, that Earthbound, you didn't ever see your characters. It was just they did their attacks or whatever. But on that game, it was cool how it was just kind of like you see the characters' backs, and then you actually like see them attack and like chopping at the enemies and doing their spells and shit. Like that is a really good game.
Well, because at the time you had like two different battle systems. You had either the Final Fantasy style, where like it was like a side view, or you had the Dragon Quest style, where it was like a first-person view, which Earthbound directly copied. And Sega kind of was like the best of both worlds. It was the Dragon Quest like front view, but it also had elements of the Final Fantasy style like side view, which was kind of cool.
Yeah, I like that. That game oozed, Phantasy Star 4, I mean, oozed a lot of style, because, like you mentioned, those little, like, manga panels and the cutscenes, those are so good. All the characters had, like, a real 90s anime feel to how they looked, like their little character portraits and everything.
Their writing was phenomenal, too, because, like, that game made you really adore that, So the game bait and switches you right at the start, because it tricks you into thinking that this one character is the main character, and then just kills her off halfway through the game, and then gives you the false sense of hope that you might be able to get her back, but then goes, nope, she's gone forever. This is the main character of the game, and it's like, wow. It's like, way to just punch us in the gut.
Dude, while we're on the topic of the Sega Genesis, Contra Hardcore, it definitely deserves the title, like the whole hardcore, because holy fuck, that very first level is just, it's a fucking jawbreaker, like just a jaw buster of a track right there that really sets the tone for the whole game for you. Oh my god,
Yeah.
I couldn't find that song anywhere on YouTube. I had to actually like download an actual like MP3 copy of that song from the game's official soundtrack and everything, and oh my god.
This isn't an RPG, but like It's speaking
Oh
of
yeah.
speaking of the
Yeah, my bad.
speaking of the Genesis. Well, I'm gonna break it right here too. Speaking of the Genesis, one of like the legends of that console was Howard Drawson, who did a bunch of songs for Sonic 3, particularly the and Knuckles half of Sonic 3. But one of his probably best like soundtracks he ever did was Comic Zone.
Oh yeah, I always forget about that game. Yeah, that had a really slapping one too. Comic Zone.
It sounds like a '90s grunge album. It's amazing.
Man, I'm still. I was hoping that by the time you finished that, I would have picked my last one, but I'm still kind of struggling. I'm just gonna. I'm just gonna say the whole Bravely Default series. They all have such good. Is another one of those ones where it's like a mixture of the orchestra and really hard guitar or heavy guitars. And if I had to pick one, I guess I'd say the very first game.
Yeah, the Revo, I think his name was, composed it.
Yeah, Revo.
Marty Friedman played guitar in that too, which is funny.
Really?
Yeah, from Megadeth. I guess Marty Friedman did some guitar work in that game.
Dude, I bet, because the what is it? The tracks for when you're fighting, when you're in those like elemental like crystal temples and you're fighting the bosses there. Those guitars just they're not holding back anything at all. They're going fucking nuts. I can't even think of the name of that track anymore. But a lot of the tracks in that game, especially like the different battle, like the final battle against Aerie. Yeah, that one. That one's got some pretty crazy guitars too.
Nah, Bravely Default. It's sad because I think Bravely Default, Bravely Second and Bravely Default 2, I think are better games inherently.
Oh, yeah.
But the first one just had such a great feel to it.
It did. What's weird about that game is when I first got it, I thought it was just going to be like a more modern Final Fantasy 1, basically, where you just make your character. They're just nameless, faceless characters that you just make and throw into the world. I thought that was going to be it, but they're actually like in Bravely Default, they're actually well-developed characters with their own personalities and their own like mannerisms and what's her name? The princess chick. I forget.
Not Agnes, right? The other one. I want to say Adia, but that doesn't sound right.
No, I think it is Idia. I'm pretty sure.
Oh, it is Adia. Okay.
Her especially, she starts off real snotty, but then you learn that she, like, through all those little Tales of-esque little like side story.
I love games that add stuff like that.
Yeah, you learn a lot about her. Like, she really loves food, and she man, they're all such great characters. Those games are, if the listeners, if you haven't played Bravely Default, any of them, I suggest that you do. Well, maybe not the first game because it gets really repetitive there toward the end. But
you kind of have to play the first game to play Bravely Second, though, which I think is But Bravely Default 2, it didn't get nearly the praise the first one got, but Bravely Default 2 was phenomenal.
It was so good. That one, that's another thing too. The jobs in Bravely Default 2 are a lot more refined and fluid than they were. Because the first game, I feel like a lot of the skills that different jobs learned were just worthless. Because there was a lot where it'd be like, I forget what the names were. They were like skills that give you different weapons, but at like S level or something, or like skills that you wouldn't ever use. But Bravely Default 2 really streamlined that shit, so like every skill that you learned was inherently useful, and it's great.
Yeah, Bravely Default, I always felt like was kind of like, it was like Squeenix's love letter to fans of the classic Final Fantasy series. Like,
absolutely,
it was like to all these people who missed these missed the old style Final Fantasy. It's like, here is a game for you.
It had lots of twists too. I'm still stuck on toward the end of Bravely Default 2, but Bravely Default and Bravely Second had some pretty cool twists in them.
Nah, it's such a likable cast of characters too, which is really important for an RPG, especially an older style one.
Oh my god, yeah. All right, man, bring us out with a bang. Do you have a last one?
So my last one is, so we had kind of mentioned it previously with Bravely Default, but one of my other favorite games of all time is Tales of the Abyss, and Tales of the Abyss has a phenomenal soundtrack as well. Tales of the Abyss is composed by a pretty well-known composer in the RPG scene because he's done a ton of games. Motoi Sakuror. He's done pretty much all the Tales series. He's done the Star Ocean series. His resume is huge. He actually played keyboards on Bravely Default, believe it or not.
Oh, really? That's cool.
So he's a very also kind of a polarizing figure though, because a lot of people think his music is kind of bland and generic, because he just does so many projects. I think he also did like Valkyrie Profile and all those games.
I'm looking him up right now. Holy shit.
Yeah, he's done a lot of games.
Oh my god. He did Shining Force 3.
Yep.
Damn. Oh, and he did Golden Sun. Oh my god, yes. That was also one of my, almost one of my picks too.
Tales of the Abyss's soundtrack though is phenomenal. There's so many different styles. Like there's like industrial aspects. There's like rockin' songs, some classical like songs. Like one of my favorite songs in the game is there's a city that's like it's like a city by the water, and the song sounds like it's like this like beach sounding song, kind of like the Costa del Sol from Seven, but it's like it's got such a bop like kind of beat to it, and it like I would just hang out in that city, just roam around aimlessly for like hours just listening to that song because it's so freaking catchy.
Oh man, this is probably off topic, but when you mentioned the whole beach thing, oh, what is it from Final Fantasy X? Besaid Beach, I think. That one is so freaking serene. Doesn't even begin to describe it because it's just so peaceful. Listeners, look up the song from Besaid Beach from Final Fantasy X. You won't regret it. That's a song you could do yoga to. That's a song you could. This is a song you could send many a work email out to. Just put it on repeat, and you'll never feel stressed a day in your life.
No, that one's a classic. The battle themes are fun. It does one of my favorite things where like the main theme of the game gets like to me like one of my favorite RPG like soundtrack cues is when there's a main theme and then that main theme is reprised multiple times throughout the game at different points. And one of my favorites in Tales of the Abyss is I don't want to spoil it because it's a very key plot point, but there's a certain battle that takes place right at the end that's a very climactic, like it's not the final boss, but it's one of the final like kind of like fights that happens during the game, and the theme that plays is like this like epic like slow rendition of the game's main theme, and it's just such a callback. You're like, hey, I remember that.
That's awesome. One thing I'd like to point out about video game soundtracks is that I really dislike when all songs are like the same style, because I can't think of any names off the top of my head, but there's quite a few I've played where it's just all orchestral all the way through or something, but I like when they really mix it up.
A lot of modern RPGs I've noticed have done that, and it's very disheartening at times because you're like, it makes it so hard to like stay like on track with a game.
Yeah, a good soundtrack could make even the dullest game. And this is a point to Bomberman Hero, which is not an RPG. It's just Bomberman Hero is an alright game, but the soundtrack really makes up for it because it's popping. But yeah, a good soundtrack can make any game stand out.
It's why the Sonic series is so memorable.
Yeah, oh my god. And yeah, we talked about this in the other chat too. Sonic Adventure soundtrack, holy shit.
It's ironic that Sonic's one RPG is like the worst soundtracks he's ever had. Was
that the one on the DS?
Yeah, and the soundtrack is horrendous. It's like the RPG is the one Sonic game where they dropped the ball on the soundtrack. It was like, really?
It is weird that one was a BioWare game of all devs too. It was just
it was a BioWare game, but what you didn't realize is that BioWare just handed it off to their C team and were like, make it work.
It's Sonic and it's turn-based. Do it.
Game had some good dialogue, I'll give it that, but everything else was the battle system was literally Elite Beat Agents.
Really? Like
to do actions, you had to like touch the screen at various points and like drag the stylus around. It was really not a bad idea, but when you screw up, because it was very sensitive and you screwed up just a bit, there goes your healing move.
I've always been curious. Like, I know that game exists and it's been on my wish list for a while, but now I kind of don't want it. Especially since it's like $80 now. Now I don't want it.
Yeah, I wouldn't. And if you get it for cheap, I'd recommend giving it a shot just because it's fascinating. But yeah, it's not worth what they want for it nowadays. It also ends on a cliffhanger. That's never gonna get resolved. Eggman won. That's just how it ends. Eggman won. Did you have one more, or did you want to do some like honorable mentions, or?
Yeah, we can do some honorable mentions. Go ahead with any of yours. I still gotta look a couple up really fast.
So a key one that I wanted to mention, but like it's a bit overpicked, I think nowadays. But Earthbound soundtrack. There's literally there's like a Beatles like
that's absolutely
sampling. There's like Monty Python samples in that soundtrack.
I forget which town it is. I think it's Foreside. The track for that town is. I know listeners can't see it or hear it, but I'm doing the whole like okay thing with my fingers because it's so good. The battle with the all the battle themes are called battle with a something, but there's one where like you're when you battle a machine. I think it's battle against a mechanical opponent or something, but it's got a.
Oh, is it like the one that's like Johnny C. Good or something? Johnny B. Good or whatever?
It's got a lot of bass. It's like boom, boom, boom.
I think I know the one you're talking about. There's a ton of them. To me, the one track in that game that always sticks to my mind is the character naming screen, where it's like that, like the first freaking script, one of the first sounds you freaking hear in that game, and it's like
do 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 do. Yeah, dude.
And then it gets to that funky like bass jam song where it's like do 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 do. Like it's like this is way more catchy than it needs to be.
The third town is just called Threed.
Threed.
I think
yeah,
that's a really good one.
Onnet, Tucson, Threed, and Foreside.
Yep, Foreside.
The Runaway Guys, the Blues Brothers parody. Their songs are great too.
I can't believe this wasn't one of my picks, but this is gonna have to be an honorable mention, I guess. But the Xenoblade series also goes really hard.
Oh, and if you're gonna talk about Xenoblade, because that composer. Oh, maybe not Xenoblade. I'm thinking Xenogears.
Xenogears was also a good one. I should bring that one up too.
I was gonna say like a soundtrack that we can't not talk about is Chrono Trigger. Rick Astley's in that game.
Really? What?
You ever heard Robo's theme? It sounds like "Never Gonna Give You Up" by Rick Astley. It's like one of the funniest things ever because everyone's like, "Yeah, I wonder if that was intentional or just a really funny coincidence." Yeah, Chrono Trigger was special. Like probably like the pinnacle of like SNES like sound.
Oh hell yeah, it was. Oh, what's another? I just had another SNES one on my brain.
Secret of Mana, maybe.
Yes, yeah, that one. There was one track called like Mystic Metal or Metal Force. I forget, I don't know. All the tracks on Secret of Mana are really good, especially the Winter Town.
Another SNES title, though, that's pretty interesting is Secret of Evermore.
Mm-hmm.
That was, believe it or not, like the first composition by Jeremy Soule.
Who, what else does he do?
Elder Scrolls.
Yeah. Holy shit, okay.
He did Skyrim, Oblivion, and I think maybe Morrowind.
Holy shit, okay. I never would have thought that he'd go from SNES to the. What is the main song for Skyrim? It's like, no, that's Pirates of the Caribbean. I'm thinking about. God damn it.
The Dragonborn song. Well, it's funny because he did Secret of Evermore on the SNES, and then he did like humongous entertainment games, and then he did Harry Potter games, and now he's Harry Potter. Elder Scrolls.
I'm really mad at myself for not bringing up The World Ends With You. I don't know how I forgot about that.
A lot of Square Enix games around.
Yeah. Hey, listeners, if you enjoy Persona soundtracks, you're gonna love The World Ends With You. It's so hip-hoppy and synthy and so great.
I was listening to it today, but the old school Pokemon soundtracks too.
Oh, yeah.
I was still saying to this day, Red's theme from Gold and Silver is like the best final boss theme like in Pokemon ever.
I really like the town themes from Gold and Silver.
The Game Boy Advance was an underrated like console for soundtracks.
It really, yeah, Ruby and Sapphire. That's for sure had some really like Slateport City where it's like dun, 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 na, 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 na.
Yep.
That was big for a GBA game. It's so hard to believe that it had such grand tracks like that.
You know, everybody like always dumps on it for like too much surfing, but the surfing theme is freaking epic in that game. It's the one that's kind of like it's like. Oh
yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about now.
I mean, Grant.
Now it's forever in my head.
I mean, granted though, technically the song goes do 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 in a battle every 5 seconds, but you have to like sit there and let it play just for a minute to really.
In like 5 seconds, you'll run into a Magikarp or some goddamn shit. A Wingull. Oh my god. Enough with the Wingulls.
A Wingull or a Tentacruel, the Zubats of the sea. I'm trying to think of another one that like would be a good like honorable mention, because I'm trying to think back to like 8-bit era, but there isn't a lot of 8-bit RPGs that really come to mind.
The only ones.
I mean, other than Pokemon.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say I've played a whole lot of 8-bit like RPGs on like the NES, or like I haven't ever played the Master System, so don't even bring that guy up. But the only RPGs that come to mind for the NES would be like Final Fantasy, and I think that's about it.
Dragon Quest or Dragon
Oh
Warrior.
yeah, Dragon Warrior.
But when I think Dragon Quest, I think like the later games, particularly like the DS ones. Actually, that's another game. Dragon Quest IV has a phenomenal soundtrack as well.
Yeah, it does. I don't know if this counts as a JRPG. Well, Omori has a really good soundtrack, but I don't know if that one counts. If you haven't played Omori, Bill, I highly recommend that you do, because that's a really good game. With a really
I'll have to look into
with
that
a
one.
really bumping soundtrack too. It's all over the goddamn place.
I could honestly just sit there and listen to like RPG music for days.
I know. I've downloaded so many good fucking songs over the years, and I can honestly just talk about JRPG soundtracks until the end of time itself. But fuck, I'm already out of different ones. Without looking at my phone, I'm out of ideas.
Yeah, I'm out of ones to really like come to my Yakuza Like a Dragon. I guess that was really good. I enjoyed that game.
Oh my god, yes, that battle theme. Man, that one really hits you. Oh my god.
I keep forgetting that's an RPG. I'm like, all right, RPG.
That's a great one. Golden Sun. I don't recall any of the town themes or anything, but I know that on the first game, the battle theme is really, really good.
I'd be stretching, because I could be like, well, there's like this weird obscure RPG I played on the Game Gear from like 30 years ago or something, before I was born, you know.
Not everybody, that's it. Those are all the best soundtracks. Don't even try to message us or add us with any other great soundtracks. But actually, yeah, go ahead and do it, because we love to know what your favorite JRPG soundtracks are, or just individual tracks, honestly, because there's a lot of games that I couldn't name the entire soundtrack, but I just know like select songs and everything. But
I could do an entire podcast on Persona 5 or like Final Fantasy 8 soundtracks. So.
Oh yeah, like a music appreciation thing, just sitting there vibing with like the coffee shop song from Persona 5. That one is.
Yeah. Well, actually, just a quick shout out. Our buddies over at Gaming Together have a series called Listening Together, and they actually did an episode on Final Fantasy 8 soundtrack that I guested on. So.
God damn, that'd be a good one. Final Fantasy 8 needs more love. Go love Final Fantasy 8, everybody. But yeah, Bill, where can everybody find you?
So I have two primary podcasts that you can follow me at. There's obviously Gaming Collecting's my primary. That's on all the major podcasting platforms, particularly Apple, Spotify. You can find it easily at Linktree, or I think it's just Linktree / The Barber Who Games. And then my second podcast it's a bit more of a part-time one. It's on hiatus at the moment, but the 3DO Experience, which is a retrospective podcast talking about the Panasonic 3DO, the console itself, and the company behind it. Yeah, and that's pretty much where you can find me.
As for Super Pod Saga, yeah, if you follow us anywhere, you can find us. You can find us in our link tree. That's in almost all of our bios, except TikTok, because TikTok doesn't allow you to put anything in your bio, because TikTok's weird. But yeah, we're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, everywhere. All of our episodes are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. If we're not on one platform that you listen to your stuff on, just tell us and we'll get it on there. But otherwise, that's it for us. And thank you for listening. And goodbye.
Have a good one, guys.